Okay, everybody, this is it. We had the dreaded late spring frost or freeze. Got down to 32 degrees last night, and I was able to cover as much as I could, and maybe more realistically, I was able to cover as much as I was willing to. So let's check it out, see how we did. All right, so I stopped by the community garden at the Bridge Church this morning, and most of what was there I covered with frost cloth. And I had a few peppers that I covered with milk jugs with the bottoms cut out, and the jalapeno peppers under the milk jugs actually did pretty good. And sorry, they weren't jalapeno peppers, they were green bell peppers. And I lifted the milk jugs, and they actually looked pretty good. Everything under the frost cloth, though, took a pretty big hit. I was kind of surprised. It really didn't look like the frost cloth helped much at all. And so that's just, in the past, I've either waited or I just didn't cover things and got what I got. This was the first time I just kind of really even made any effort at all to cover. So I'm just learning that maybe when you get down to 32, the frost cloth just isn't going to cut it, especially with tender plants. But I had some squash, some green bell peppers, and some tomatoes that just really kind of took a pretty serious hit at the Bridge Garden. So, and then the basil as well. But I didn't even cover the basil. I just was going to let it see what happened, and I got what I got. So here I'm at DoLittle Garden, and I did cover some things. I did have some buckets and things like that I put on. So let's check it out and see how those did. Okay, so the first thing we're going to check is the squash. This, I can already tell just looking through the frost cloth that I think this did a little bit better. Oh, maybe before I check the squash, not so bueno on the melons. Just kind of didn't cover everything. Chalk it up to kind of maybe not having enough things to cover everything, but also maybe being a little bit lazy and just hoping for the best. But these little melons didn't do so good. So I'm not very hopeful that they'll recover and come back. I guess there's maybe a possibility. We'll know in the next couple of days, but I think my melons may have bit the dust. For any of you who are maybe wondering about what can take a light freeze, so we probably hit 32 degrees for an hour or so first thing this morning. And looking at the asparagus, it's looking like it fared pretty well. Not too much problems on the asparagus. So even this really young, I just transplanted this asparagus that was grown from seed out just a couple of weeks ago, and so it was still pretty young, pretty tender, and it's looking pretty good. All right, so I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to see if I can uncover this and still hold the camera, and if I can't, we'll be right back. Let's check. So I love using these logs here in the garden because I can just keep repurposing them, and wherever I put them they just break down, so I use them as beds, borders around the beds. Let's take a look. Oh, looking a little bit rough. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get these logs off and I'll be right back. Already I can tell you they're not looking great, but they are looking much better than over at the Bridge Community Garden. And this goes to show what I said in an earlier video about how hard it is to get advice from social media forums and chat forums, even when you're in the same area, because the DoLittle Garden is only a few miles from the Bridge Community Garden, and they were both covered at the exact same time with the exact same frost cloth. And even though these are looking a little rough, the ones at the Bridge Community Garden looking much worse. So one is in a raised bed, one is in the ground, and like I said, they're only a few miles apart, so kind of interesting there. So we definitely have some leaf damage, but again, I have a little bit more hope that these will recover than I do for the ones at the Bridge Garden. The dill doesn't look like it was hurt at all. So if you're ever wondering if you need to cover dill at 32 degrees for an hour or two, it did just fine. And while I'm here, I'll show you. I did rip out a whole bunch of thorny blackberry that was planted a couple of seasons ago. I didn't realize it was thorned or wasn't paying attention. I was kind of a newbie, and so I've ripped it all out, but I do expect to be pulling these suckers out for a few years at least. Luckily they come out easily. What's really interesting, and I noticed this over at the Bridge Garden as well, is there's all these little, I don't know what they are. I don't think they're hoverflies, but they kind of act like them. But they're all over both gardens right now. All right, so I'm gonna leave the cover off. I honestly, even right now, as I'm doing this, haven't decided if I'm gonna put the cover back on. It's supposed to get to 37 tonight, and I've got two minds on this. One is to leave the cover off, let these guys get as much sun as possible, and see if they recover. And then the other is to cover them back up just to be safe. At 37 degrees, I'm inclined to leave it off, but you and I will both know by the time I leave the garden today. So over here is the second area that I had frost cover. And really the main thing that I was concerned about in this area, a lot of what was in here was pretty cold tolerant. But underneath this frost cloth, I did have some green bell peppers. So a couple of them didn't get covered. And this is what the green bell peppers that didn't get covered look like. You know, just looking at them, there's maybe a possibility they could recover. But one thing that I've mentioned to a couple of new gardeners is once a plant gets stunted and it's struggling, it can sometimes be tough for them to ever really truly recuperate, and you're almost better off just starting over again. But these, I think we'll know in the next 24 hours. I think maybe by tomorrow we'll know whether or not these are going to recover enough to even be worth kind of trying to baby. So next to the bell peppers, we had some beets. And honestly, I mean, they look a little bit wilted, but not too bad. I feel pretty confident those are going to recover and be just fine. This is the part before I take the frost cover off, which I'm getting ready to do, I'm kind of excited about this because there's quite a few items in here, peppers, tomatoes, where I grabbed some plastic containers, buckets, things like that, and put those over. And based on what I saw over at the Bridge Community Garden, I'm feeling pretty hopeful about these. So let's check it out. This is just a typical storage container from Walmart. This is what I do my winter sowing in. Pretty brand new to winter sowing. I've done it before this year, but really not much. So I'm kind of calling this year my first year. So I had these around, and wow, what a difference. This is the uncovered green bell pepper. And this is the bell pepper that was under the plastic dome, and pretty significant difference. These guys are looking good. They've got some blossoms. They're not even looking wilty at all. Maybe this one leaf, but honestly, I can't even tell you for sure that that wasn't like that before. So maybe a little bit of damage. It's feeling just maybe a little bit thin on the ends here, but otherwise the plastic dome did a great job. I may actually go ahead and put that back on since we're going to get down to 37 tonight, and of everything in the garden, the peppers particularly don't like the cold, so we may go ahead and cover these guys back up. and check on them tomorrow. So I've got the frost cover off, and I'm really glad I'm doing this. So for all the questions that young gardeners have about what should I cover, when should I cover, how cold should I cover, this has really been kind of interesting. I'm a little bit surprised to see that the green peppers that were under the frost cloth are actually looking okay. They're not looking great, but considering the damage that was done to the tomatoes and the squash under the frost cloth, I'm a little bit surprised to see that these, again, this is the one that was uncovered, and then these are green peppers that were under just frost cloth, and they seem to be doing okay. So I'm pleased to see that, and not surprisingly, just behind that, I had some bok choy and choy some greens that tend to do okay in the cold. I wasn't really worried about them, and I didn't put the cover on for them. It was really just for the peppers, but everything else in here seems to be okay. My nasturtium down at the end seems to have done all right, and the dill, it's just kind of hiding over there, seems to have done just fine. So just a reminder, this was 32 degrees for a couple of hours first thing in the morning. And right now, I would guess we're easily in the 50s already this afternoon, and it's just before noon. So guys, this was me being a little cocky. Maybe optimistic is a better word. But there was a whole row of squash that I didn't cover. And it was partially I was out of frost cloth, but I was also just kind of hoping for the best. But this is what totally uncovered squash looks like after just an hour or two at 32 degrees. And I don't know if the camera is picking it up. I doubt it is, but these little flies that are everywhere are crazy. And these were not here yesterday, so I'm curious if it has anything to do with the freeze. Another thing that's kind of interesting, this isn't vegetables, this is flowers, but these two plants here are blue salvia. And even though the flowers are looking a little bit droopy, they really don't look much worse for the wear. The leaves look great. Right next to it was a lantana, which I'm kind of surprised to see really took a hit. Thankfully, I see some green leaves down there. See if I can get you a better view. Oh, I'm gonna get right in my shot here, sorry. There's some green down there, so it'll come back. I'm not worried about it. I am a little bit surprised that it took such a hit. I thought they were a little bit hardier than that. But here's some more of the squash. So if you are wondering, if you're a new gardener and you've got squash out in a in-ground bed and the temperatures are threatening to be down, you definitely want to cover them. A little sad to see this, but I do feel hopeful that it's early enough in the season that all is not lost. But this is our grape, and it was just starting to bud out, and looks like we already had that on there for you. Look, we had a bunch of little grape clusters all over it. So not sure what's going to happen here. I don't think it's dead. I don't think it'll die, but I'm not sure how much it's going to produce this year. If it'll go ahead and put more, I know it'll put more leaves out. I'm not sure about the grape clusters or if we've missed that window, but that was the grape. Here at DoLittle, this is probably the second, if not the third year that we've had volunteer watermelons. And I definitely see a couple that have taken the freeze and they seem to be doing okay. And then I've seen a couple that not so much, kind of took a hit. So I remember the first year that I planted watermelon out here, I had one, maybe two plants, and we got quite a few watermelons off those two plants. the following spring, I had 39 volunteer seedlings. So I know it just takes a couple. So I'm hopeful that the ones that have survived, we're still going to get. And then I also have some watermelon seedlings. Doing a little bit of a land race thing with the melons and the watermelons. And what that means is these volunteers, these will be, I guess if they volunteered last year, this is the second year, they're third generation. So these are coming up from the very original watermelon plants. And then I'll plant some more seeds and we'll just let them continue to cross-pollinate. And the idea is if you keep doing that, that you will just get stronger and more vigorous and more highly adapted melons. And that goes for a lot of different produce, but melons and things like that, we're going to keep an eye out for that. So excited to see no impact, it appears, to the boysenberry. So we were starting to have flower blossoms, and it looks like I don't see any damage, and I see a lot of baby blossoms coming. So this is I believe, I kind of lost track because I planted a bunch of berries at one time. But I do believe, that for a while there I was wondering if this was a tayberry or a boysenberry. And I do think it's a boysenberry. But I'm not sure because I planted both of them at the same time and one of them died. But I'm super excited. This is a thornless berry, and it's part of my little plum tree guild here. So I've got some salvia that's just volunteered. I'm gonna have to work to keep my entire garden from turning into blue salvia. That baby likes to spread. And then over here, nestled in some old tree trunks that are breaking down. They say a new forest is built on an old forest. Is this boysenberry. So I'm really excited to see how many berries we get this year, because this is its first year not being a baby. You gonna come for a pet? I know. I can't rub your belly through the fence. Not surprisingly, our cold weather crops aren't looking damaged at all. They do not mind the cold. In fact, they prefer it. So the lettuce is looking fine. And the fennel is looking completely fine. In fact, this fennel is another plant I think is going to want to take over the garden. This was like 2 or 3 fennel plants or fennel seeds that I planted a couple of years ago, and it just keeps coming back bigger and bigger and bigger. I have never actually gotten a fennel bulb harvested, and because I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing with fennel, but I will tell you I love black licorice. And so when I'm out here in the garden, I'm trying to be careful to get it from the inside, but I will just grab a little piece and throw that in my mouth, and it tastes like black licorice candy. So this garlic was planted back in October, and it's been doing really well. I've been shocked at how big some of the stalks are. That is one garlic stalk. And when I started noticing them getting all these leaves, I started worrying that maybe something was going wrong, and there still might be. But so I pulled up one of the garlics just to see what was going on, and it looked fine. It was immature, it wasn't ready. This is still first week of April, but there didn't appear to be anything wrong. So I'm not exactly sure what's causing all these multiple leaves, but for the most part, they look okay from the freeze. I would say they're looking a little more yellow today than they were yesterday. And so they might have taken a bit of a hit. But if I didn't know better, I'd be starting to think they're getting close to ready to harvest. But it may just be that they took a bit of a hit from the cold. These are the onions, and besides the fact that they are laying down just a little bit more than they were yesterday, there's also some telltale signs that they've taken a bit of a hit, and I may not see the extent of the damage yet, but they're a little bit darker green than they were before. And whenever a plant gets freeze damage, it gets kind of this little bit of a translucent quality to it. So even though looking at these right now, I'm not too worried, there is a chance that I can't tell the extent of the damage yet. So these are the onions, and I will say some of these did start to throw up scapes recently, and I've been clipping them off. I've read different information online. Some say if you cut the scapes off, the onions will still bulb up. And some say that if you cut the scapes off, they're still not going to bulb, that once they throw up a scape, they're not going to bulb. So kind of conflicting information. I've also read that if you leave the scapes on, they will still bulb and the onions will be smaller but tastier. So I need to do a little bit more of my own growing and experimenting to know the answer to that question. Not surprisingly, another bed of greens and cold weather lovers that aren't showing any wear and tear after the cold weather. That might be a leftover seedling. I had some bok choy, not sure which one that is, some arugula, and then maybe you guys can tell me because I can't remember what I planted. There were a few things that I think I planted too soon and they didn't germinate. And so I came back and I reseeded it, and now I can't remember what I reseeded there. And then some lettuce. I'm so excited about the lettuce. That's one of my favorite things to come out in the garden and get. And it is not showing any wear and tear from the cold at all. And then a super fun project that I'm excited about is back in February when I trimmed up, right over there is the Methley plum. And I trimmed that all up in February. It's hard to tell because, man, it just leafed out like crazy. But I did have a really pretty little goblet shape on it when I trimmed it. And then it just blew up. But over here, I actually took some of the branches that I trimmed off. There's 4 of them here. And all 4 of them are showing signs. I stuck them in the ground and see if I can get this to focus. Sorry if I can, but all 4 of them are budding out. They're all showing signs. Let's see if I can find that one. All showing signs of leaf bud. There we go. So I may have some little Methley plum seedlings here before I know it. I've tried this before and they budded like this and they didn't survive. So I'm just remaining cautiously hopeful. So the strawberry looks like it took that freezing temp uncovered just fine. So again, every situation is different. You have to know all your unique variables from your own experience and location, but this strawberry was out uncovered and he's doing just fine and even got a friend. So not gonna lie, a little worried about the peach. This peach has been in the ground for a few years. It has blossomed and it's had baby peaches on it in a previous year. This year, I really kind of was hoping the peaches would stick. I think it's old enough that we could have gotten a few peaches from it, but I'm not sure now with the freeze. So I'm gonna see if I can find one for you. Here we go. See if I can see well enough. I'm having a hard time focusing my own eyeballs, let alone the camera. Let's see. I'm trying to let you guys see, but the sun is right in my eyes. Okay, there we go. Right there is a little baby peach. And I can't tell if it's been damaged or any harm done by the freeze, but there's these little baby peaches all over this tree. So we'll see. 2025 may be the year that we get some peaches, and it may not. This is a Sam Houston peach. And like I said, it's been in the ground for a few years now. I would say that trunk is about 4 to maybe pushing 5 inches in diameter. And it was pruned as well in February. And it does have a nice open goblet shape right now, but we'll let it get some more growth on it because I'm pretty sure that will change. So after what I've seen with the green peppers, these buckets are covering our jalapeno peppers, and the jalapenos are what we dug out and overwintered in the garage and then put back in the ground. And I wondered if I'd put them in the ground too soon, but I mentioned in a previous video there's a lot of different variables, and I don't think they were thriving. They had leafed out and they weren't thriving in the buckets. And so sometimes you have to make a decision. Do you get them in the ground a little bit early where it's still a little bit cold, or do you leave them in containers where they're not thriving? So I made the decision to go ahead and get them in the soil. We were having, here in North Texas, we were having 90-degree plus days. And so I made the decision to go ahead and get them in the ground and just hope for the best again. And so now we'll see how they did. Let me go right to one of these middle ones here and take a look. So weighted down the buckets so that they didn't blow away. And all right. Okay. I would honestly say, you know, these guys, they weren't loving the cold nights as it was. And to my eye, they're not looking any worse for the wear. So I don't think this cold snap, I think the bucket provided a ton of coverage for them. And I think they were well protected. So I'm really, really pleased about that. And just an FYI about these green buckets, this was so easy. They're a good sized bucket. That, I would say that jalapeno plant is probably about 10 inches tall. And this bucket just dropped right over top of it, put the log on it for a weight, and I was done covering. It was so easy. And I actually have, let's see, I think I have 6 of these particular buckets, and I just got them from Uline. You can buy in bulk, you can buy quantities, and they're a lot more affordable. These I actually have lids for because they're going to be part of our composting program. But wow, was it ever nice to have these just to throw on top of these jalapeno plants. And so now I still have to decide if I'm going to leave them uncovered or cover them one more night. With the jalapenos, just because they don't like the cold and it is going to get to 37, I may go ahead and cover these one more night. The other thing is, now that one down there, I don't remember. It's probably, I don't think it's a Home Depot bucket. Hold on. Yeah, it is. It's a Home Depot bucket. You can get these 5-gallon buckets at Home Depot. I think they're like $5 or $6, $4.99, something like that. Or if you have a Firehouse Subs franchise in your area, the big 5-gallon buckets that they get their pickles in, they actually sell those. And I think they're, in my area at least, I don't know if it varies, but in my area I think they're like $3. So you can pick up some really inexpensive 5-gallon pails, hang on to them, and since this one's a little bit taller, I probably could have put, if I had more of these, I could have put them over my tomatoes. And I did put a couple over my tomatoes, and we'll check those out now. So I was really excited about this potato project because DoLittle garden is a no-dig, no-till garden, and I try not to disturb the soil as much as possible. That makes it a challenge when you're growing root crops like potatoes. So I was giving these grow bags a try, and one of the techniques that I had learned was you only put about 6 or 7 inches of soil in the bottom of the grow bag. And these are specifically for potatoes, so they're taller. And I think I want to say they were 10-gallon. And what you do is you put your seed potatoes in the bottom, and then as they grow, you literally just keep burying them with more soil. So I would leave just 1 or 2 leaves sticking out at the top, and then I would just keep adding soil, adding soil, adding soil, and plan to do that until the whole 10-gallon grow bag was filled up. And then I came out this morning and I did not cover these. Again, there were just things that I just decided to hope for the best, and that did not pay off this time. These might come back, but I doubt very much they will thrive. We will see. Really, really a lot of damage to these leaves. So they're thin, they're fragile, and if these come back, it'll be quite something. I'm gonna keep going though, like there's just, you know, it's just enough to give you hope. But again, at this point, normally I would say if you had time to start over, that would be better. But because these are potatoes and we're kind of past that season, I'm just gonna wait and just see what happens. That's something that gets talked about a lot in the garden forums, is when you see damage, like whether it's pest damage or hail damage or freeze damage, again, you don't want to baby something along that's never going to thrive or really be productive. But at the same time, don't be too quick to just write it off. You know, wait a little bit, see what it does, take a look, see if it's recovering. I don't have much hope for these, but it's past the time to plant potatoes, so I might as well just keep going and see what they do. And if they don't do anything, then I've got nice 5 nice 10-gallon grow bags that I can plant something else in. So part of my experiment is I had this one tomato seedling, actually 2, one on either side of this fennel, and I didn't have enough buckets. So partially because I didn't have enough buckets, and partially because I just wanted to see what would happen. Again, if you're joining us the video late, we hit 32 degrees for at least an hour or 2 first thing this morning. And this is the uncovered tomato plant. And it's looking hit pretty hard. And I'll show you the one next to it too. I put this bin. So we've got a really thick stand of fennel, bronze fennel next to it. And then I have this bin that I kind of tipped up beside it, hoping it might shield it a little bit. And I did the same thing on this side, but both of these tomatoes took a pretty rough hit. Not too hopeful that they'll make it. There was a chance I planted those too close to that fennel anyway. It was coming up. This is just like the fennel on the other side of the garden. It comes back every year. It actually never really dies off, but I did not realize how much it was going to explode here just in the last couple of weeks. So I did probably plant these tomatoes too close to it, but I was kind of excited to see what would happen once the tomatoes got taller and grew up past the fennel, just in terms of pest protection and all those possible advantages. But looks like these particular tomatoes aren't gonna make it past this freeze. Okay guys, I have not peeked. I have 1, 2, 3 tomato plants left out of so many tomato seedlings. Let me think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Gosh, I probably had something like 32 really healthy, really vigorous tomato seedlings, and probably 9 of them went over to the Bridge Community Garden. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 came over here, and I gave some to a friend. And as of right now, after this freeze, I have potentially 3 tomato seedlings left. And guys, that's just gardening. When I first started out and something like this would happen, I would be so shocked by how quickly you could lose a crop, whether it was to bugs or weather or neglect. And I've just learned it's gardening, and you just do the best you can, you do what you can when you can, and you're just happy with what you get in the end. So big moment, guys. Let's see if we have any tomato seedlings left. Oh, just while we're looking, that's the basil, or what was the basil. Okay. I'm going to try to lift this straight off so I don't hurt it. Okay, okay. Not super great, but not as horrible as the other ones. It's definitely showing some signs of being freaked out by the cold. See how it's kind of dark? It almost has this sort of darker, almost translucent quality to some of it. So I'll say this. Yeah, definitely some damage. I'm not thrilled, but I'm not horrified. This may or may not make it. We did have blossoms. Probably not going to still have any blossoms. And just while I'm here, I'll show you, because I had cut them off most of the other ones. But when you see, let's see if I can turn it here. When you see these little dots, oh, I'm having a hard time focusing, sorry guys. When you see these little dots, that is flea beetle damage. And what I've been told and what I experienced here in DoLittle Garden is it happens kind of early in the spring when you first put the seedlings in, and then they kind of move on. So it's not usually terminal for the plant. On the other ones, I just cut these lower leaves off and got them off the ground. On this one, I missed this one. So the damage is here, but I do think the flea beetles are gone. But now we've got some frost damage. So these were covered in buckets, and it worked really well for the peppers, maybe not enough for the tomatoes. So maybe my, I don't know if you call it hypothesis, I'm not sure, that the peppers would be more vulnerable to the cold than the tomatoes. In this case, wasn't true. The peppers actually handled the cold better than the tomatoes did, even under the buckets. So interesting. I'm going to check a couple more. Be right back. Okay, so this is the second tomato that I just lifted the bucket off of, and there's that flea beetle damage out under there. But honestly, this one's looking a little bit better. It doesn't have that dark tinge to it that shows signs of freeze damage. We do still have some blossoms that look pretty good. So I would say I am not seeing a lot of damage on this one at all. So if the first one I looked at is a little iffy, I'm feeling pretty good about the second one. So far, 1 out of 32 tomato seedlings is a winner. All right, I've got one more to check. Let's check it out. So guys, if you are growing basil and the forecast is going to be down near freezing and you're wondering whether you should cover it or not, I'm here to tell you, go ahead and cover it. Get some kind of cover on your basil if it's going to get down near freezing. I'm not sure how many basil plants I had total, but pretty much all of them look like that. So I will be quickly restarting some basil seed indoors. Up here in this front little square of the garden, This tub here, still working on plans for this. It has been a guppy bowl. That did not work out. The guppies couldn't take the cold of winter. It has been a goldfish bowl. The goldfish could not take the heat of summer. Then we turned it into Wormville. And the cool thing about having this as Wormville is it's built up on cinder blocks, and then the soil is kind of built up around it. And last summer, when the watermelon vine was all spread all around it, it was getting a little bit of shade from the watermelon vine, and then we put up this additional shade. But it was like 105 to 110 degrees several days, and the worms just couldn't take it, and I do not believe we have any live worms in there anymore. So that's kind of the screen that was leaning against it. It's just a welded wire top that we had over the worm bed just to keep big critters out and stuff, but right now it's a glorified planter. I would love to get some worms back in there, but I need to try to figure out how to keep them alive. The one major thing that I thought of is this was a brand new worm bed. Oh, and what I started to say is it's built up on blocks, and there's a mesh screen over the drain. So the worm juice, for lack of a better word, would automatically just drain out and into the garden soil, which I loved. So I would really, really like for this to be a Wormville again, but I just have to figure out how to keep the worms alive in our heat, because just giving them some shade isn't enough. We just get too hot. So if anybody has any ideas, please put them in the comments, because it would just thrill me to death to be able to keep this as our worm project. Okay, so as a bonus for hanging with us all the way to the end, I have decided I am going to put the frost covers back on those beds. And my logic is, on the one closest to us that has the green peppers in it, I just think they could use a little bit more protection tonight. It's going to be 37. I know they're not going to love that, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw that back on. For the squash in the distance, you know, they're damaged enough that I'm not sure if they're going to be salvageable. So I guess I figure, why not just throw the cover back on, and then we'll reassess tomorrow or the next day and see how they're doing. If they don't recover, then I've got seedlings waiting to go right back in their place. And that is the attitude that you want to have, is gardening is nature. Gardening is not controlling nature. Garden is working alongside nature. So you're going to have pests, you're going to have bad weather, you're going to have unexpected surprises and wind events and all, you know, vermin. I happen to know for a fact I've got at least one vole in here. It's just gonna happen. So be okay with it, roll with the punches, be ready to plant more, and just keep going. Anyways, thanks for joining DoLittle Garden, and we'll post an update as soon as possible on how everything is surviving and thriving after what we hope is the last freeze of the season. It's the next day, and we had about 37 degrees last night, and this tomato I covered back up with the bucket, and it's looking great. Looks like it came through. There was a little bit of damage. I think that was from the previous night. And this tomato was left totally uncovered overnight, and it's looking great as well. So 37 degrees for me in my garden for this tomato, or these tomatoes. I actually had a couple that I left uncovered, including this one down here at the end that had the broken stem. They were all left uncovered at 37 degrees, and looks like they did just fine.